My daughter dropped her 3 kids off at my house for an afternoon and vanished into thin air for 8 years. I raised them. I fed them. I loved them when she didn't want them. Then last night she kicked down my door with the police accusing me of kidnapping. I sat in a jail cell while she and her new husband moved into the home I built with my own hands. But she forgot one thing. She forgot about the envelope I buried under the floorboards the very night she abandoned her children. When the judge sees what is inside that envelope, she won't just lose custody, she will lose her freedom. Before I tell you what was in that envelope, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you believe grandparents have rights too. It was 2 in the morning when my world ended. I was asleep in my recliner the way I always am because my back does not handle a soft mattress well anymore after my time in the Corps. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the soft breathing of 3 children sleeping in the rooms down the hall. Then the front door exploded. It did not just open, it splintered inward with a violence that shook the dust from the ceiling rafters. I was on my feet instantly, my old Marine instincts firing before my eyes were even fully open. I reached for the baseball bat I keep behind the chair, but a blinding white light hit me square in the face. "Get on the ground! Hands where I can see them! Now!" The voice was screaming, guttural and aggressive. I squinted against the beam, seeing the silhouettes of tactical gear and drawn weapons. This was not a robbery. This was a raid. I dropped the bat and slowly raised my hands, my heart hammering against my ribs, not for myself, but for the kids. Leo, Mia, Noah, they were sleeping just 20 feet away. "Officer, I am Harold Foster. I own this home." I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my veins. "There are children in the house. Please lower your voices." They did not listen. 2 officers rushed me, kicking my legs apart and slamming my chest against the cold hardwood floor. I felt the cold steel of handcuffs bite into my wrists. I tried to turn my head to ask what was happening, why they were treating a 69-year-old mechanic like a terrorist. But then I saw her. She walked in through the broken doorway, stepping over the splinters of the frame like she was entering a ballroom. She was wearing a coat that looked like it cost more than my truck, and her hair was perfectly styled despite the hour. But it was the performance that turned my stomach. She threw her hands over her mouth and let out a wail that sounded like a wounded animal. "Oh my God, my babies. You monster. You kept them from me." It was Vanessa, my daughter. The woman I had not seen since she left a 1-year-old baby in a playpen and drove away in my truck 8 years ago. She looked at me not with shame or regret, but with a triumphant sneer that vanished the moment the officers looked at her, replaced instantly by the mask of a grieving mother. She pointed a manicured finger at me while I lay cheek pressed to the floorboards. "That is him, officer. That is the man who stole my children. That is the man who threatened to kill me if I ever came back." I tried to shout to tell them she was lying, that she was the one who abandoned us, but an officer pressed a knee into my back, stealing the air from my lungs. "You have the right to remain silent, Mr. Foster," the officer barked. I watched helpless as she stepped past me. She did not even look me in the eye. She just marched down the hallway towards the bedrooms where my grandkids, my life, were waking up to a nightmare. The commotion had done exactly what I feared. I heard the creak of bedroom doors opening. I twisted my neck, straining against the officer's grip to see down the hallway. Leo was the first one out. He is 17 now, tall and lanky with my jawline and his father's eyes. He stood in the doorway of his room wearing just his basketball shorts, his face a mask of absolute confusion and terror. He saw me pinned to the ground, saw the guns, saw the broken door. Grandpa Leo shouted, his voice cracking. "What are you doing? Get off him!" He took a step forward, his fists clenched, ready to defend me just like I taught him to defend his family. "Leo, stay back." I rasped out, my throat dry. "Do not move, son. Just stay there." Then Mia appeared behind him, 14 years old, and trembling, clutching her stuffed bear she still slept with when she was scared. And finally, little Noah. He is only 9. He rubbed his eyes, blinking in the harsh tactical lights. He looked so small in his oversized pajamas. "Who are these people?" Grandpa Noah asked, his voice small and trembling. Then Vanessa made her move. She rushed past the officers and threw herself onto her knees in front of the children. She opened her arms wide, performing for the audience of police officers. "Leo, Mia, my sweet baby Noah. Mommy is here. Mommy finally found you." The hallway went deadly silent. Noah stared at her. He did not know who this woman was. He was a baby when she left. To him, she was a stranger smelling of expensive perfume and chaos who had just broken into our home. He shrank back, hiding behind Leo's legs. "Who are you?" Noah whispered. I saw the flash of anger in Vanessa's eyes for just a second, before she buried it under fake soles. "I am your mother, baby. I am your mommy. That man," she gestured wildly back at me, "that evil man stole you from me. He told you I left, didn't he? He lied. He kidnapped you." Leo stared at her. He was the only one old enough to have memories of her, but those memories were 8 years old. He looked from her weeping face to me handcuffed on the floor. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the confusion. "Mom," Leo asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You came back." "Yes, baby, I came back. I have been trying to come back every day for 8 years. He would not let me." "Liar," I roared, struggling against the cuffs. "Tell them the truth, Vanessa. Tell them about the note. Get him out of here," the sergeant ordered. 2 officers hauled me to my feet. My knees popped and my bad shoulder screamed in protest. They dragged me toward the door. I twisted around, trying to catch Leo's eye, trying to send him a message of strength. But Vanessa was blocking his view, hugging a stiff and terrified Mia. "It is okay, babies. The bad man is going away now." Vanessa cooed loud enough for the police to hear. "We are going to be a real family again." Noah started to cry, a high-pitched sound of pure panic. "I want Grandpa. Where are you taking Grandpa?" His screams followed me out into the cold night air. I saw neighbors peeking through their curtains, the red and blue lights flashing against the siding of the house I had spent 40 years paying off. They shoved me into the back of the cruiser. As we pulled away, I saw a man I did not recognize standing on my porch. He was lighting a cigarette, watching the scene with a smirk. He was tall, wearing a leather jacket, and looked like the kind of trouble that sticks to your shoe. He gave me a little wave as the car rolled away. That had to be Travis, the new husband, the partner in crime. I sat in the dark of that police car, and I did not cry. Marines do not cry. We plan. And I knew right then that this was not a misunderstanding. This was a war. The interrogation room was exactly like they show in the movies, cold gray and smelling of stale coffee and despair. I sat there for hours, my wrists aching, before a detective finally walked in. He was a young guy. Detective Miller looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He threw a file onto the metal table and sat down opposite me, looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You have got quite a story, Mr. Foster, kidnapping 3 kids, crossing state lines, threatening the biological mother." I leaned forward, the metal chair screeching against the floor. "I did not kidnap anyone, detective. 8 years ago on a Tuesday in November, Vanessa pulled up to my driveway in my truck. She unloaded the kids. Noah was in a diaper carrier. She told me she had a job interview in the city and she would be back by dinner. She asked to borrow my credit card for gas. I gave it to her. I took a breath, fighting to keep my voice calm. She never came back for dinner. She never came back the next day. I filed a missing persons report. I called every hospital. She drained my bank account. I took the truck and vanished. I raised those kids alone. I scraped grease off engines for 12 hours a day to put food in their mouths while she was gone. Detective Miller didn't look impressed. He opened the file and slid a stack of papers across the table toward me. That is a nice story, Harold, but it does not explain these. I looked down. They were printouts of emails, dozens of them, dated from 7 years ago, 6 years ago, all the way up to last month. I started reading and my blood ran cold. The sender name was my email address. The recipient was Vanessa. If you ever try to contact the kids again, I will kill you. I told them you are dead. Do not make me make it true. I have eyes everywhere, Vanessa, stay away, or you will regret it. My hands shook as I held the paper. I never wrote these, I whispered. I do not even know how to send an email from my phone, detective. I use a flip phone. My grandson Leo handles the computer stuff for the shop. The detective leaned back, crossing his arms. We traced the IP address, Harold. It is coming from your house. And we have text messages too, and voicemails. She kept everything. She was terrified of you. She says she spent 8 years hiding, working, saving up money for a lawyer to finally rescue her children. It is a lie, I said, my voice rising. It is a setup. She abandoned them. Ask the neighbors. Ask the school teachers who saw me at every parent-teacher conference alone. We did ask the neighbors, the detective said. They said you were very protective, very isolating, that you never let the kids talk about their mother. That fits the profile of parental alienation and abduction perfectly. I felt the walls closing in. They had been planning this. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. They had spent time forging a digital trail, creating a monster that looked like me and sounded like me but wasn't me. They had used my lack of technology skills against me. You are being charged with 3 counts of kidnapping, interference with custody, and making terroristic threats, Detective Miller said, standing up. Because of your age and no prior record, the judge might go easy on bail, but there will be conditions. I looked at him knowing what was coming. Can I go home? Can I see the kids? The detective shook his head slowly. No, Harold. There is a restraining order in place effective immediately. You cannot go within 100 yards of the children or Vanessa. And since the house is the children's residence, you cannot go there either. But it is my house, I slammed my fist on the table. The deed is in my name. I built the porch. I paid the mortgage. Not anymore. Vanessa has been granted emergency temporary guardianship. Until the trial is over, she has possession of the residence to maintain stability for the minors. You are out, Harold. They processed me like a common criminal. Fingerprints, mugshot, the orange jumpsuit. I sat in a holding cell for 12 hours until my old friend Albert came through. Albert is a retired lawyer pushing 75, but he still has a sharp mind. He bailed me out using his own retirement savings because my accounts were frozen pending the investigation. When I walked out of the station, the sun was rising, but the world looked gray. Albert drove me to my street. He had to stop the car a block away because of the restraining order. I am sorry, Harold, Albert said, his voice grave. You cannot go closer. I stepped out of the car. My knees felt weak. I walked to the edge of the invisible line the law had drawn between me and my life. I could see my house down the street, and I saw them. Travis, the man in the leather jacket, was in my front yard. He was carrying boxes. My boxes. He was laughing, talking to someone on his phone as he hauled armfuls of my life out the front door. I watched him throw my clothes onto the wet grass. He tossed my tool belt, the one my father gave me, onto the driveway. Then he came out with a large frame. Even from this distance, I recognized it. It was the portrait of my late wife, Sarah, the one that hung over the fireplace, the one I said goodnight to every single evening. Travis looked at it, shrugged, and frisbeed it across the yard. It hit the trunk of the oak tree, and I heard the glass shatter from 100 yards away. A sound escaped my throat, a growl of pure rage. I took a step forward, my fists clenching, ready to run down there and tear him apart. Harold. No, Albert grabbed my arm, holding me back with surprising strength. Do not give them what they want. If you violate the order, you go straight back to jail, and you will never help those kids. I stopped breathing hard, shaking with the effort of holding back. I watched as Vanessa came out onto the porch, holding a cup of coffee. My coffee cup. She leaned against the railing, watching Travis destroy my belongings, and she smiled. It was the smile of a predator who has just moved into the den after killing the wolf. She looked down the street and she saw me. She raised her cup in a mock toast. I stood there in the cold morning wind, wearing the same clothes I had been arrested in, watching strangers defile the sanctuary I had built for my grandchildren. They had taken my home. They had taken my reputation. They had taken the children I raised. And now they were throwing my memories into the mud. But as I watched Travis kick a pile of my shirts, I felt something shift inside me. The shock was fading, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They thought they had won. They thought I was just a helpless old man who would curl up and die. They did not know about the envelope. I turned to Albert, my eyes dry and hard. Take me to the shop, Albert. I am going to sleep in the back of the tow truck tonight. You cannot live in a truck, Harold Albert said. Watch me, I said. This is not over. It is just beginning. I climbed back into Albert's car, not looking back at the house. I could still hear the sound of breaking glass in my mind. Every shard was a promise. I would get my kids back, and I would make Vanessa and Travis regret the day they decided to declare war on a Marine. The next few days were a blur of misery and grit. I set up a cot in the back of my old Chevy breakdown truck parked in the lot of my mechanic shop. It was cold, damp, and smelled of oil and rust, but it was mine. I had a camping stove and a cooler. It was better than some foxholes I had slept in during my service, but the silence was the hardest part. No kids arguing over the remote. No Noah asking for a bedtime story. Just the wind rattling the metal siding of the garage. I tried to keep busy working on engines, but my mind was always down the street at my house. I drove by once, just passing through on the main road, staying outside the limit. I saw the changes immediately. The curtains were drawn tight, even in the middle of the day. The yard, which I kept manicured, was already littered with trash bags and beer cans. Travis's sports car was parked diagonally across the driveway, leaking oil onto the concrete I had sealed myself. It was a prison camp disguised as a suburban home. Inside that house, things were deteriorating faster than I could have imagined. I know this because Leo found a way. It was 3 days after the arrest. I was under the hood of a sedan when I heard a tapping on the metal roll-up door of the shop. I wiped my grease-stained hands on a rag and walked over, my heart skipping a beat. I rolled the door up about 2 feet and saw a pair of familiar high-top sneakers. Leo, I whispered, dropping to my knees to look under the door. Son, you cannot be here. If they see you. I do not care. Grandpa Leo's voice was thick with tears. He slid a piece of paper under the door. It was a note scrawled in haste. Meet me at the old water tower. Midnight. I should have told him no. I should have followed the court order, but the desperation in his voice broke me. At midnight, I parked the truck in the shadows of the old water tower, a spot where the kids used to ride their bikes. Leo emerged from the bushes, shivering in a thin hoodie. When he stepped into the moonlight, I gasped. His face was bruised. A dark purple welt was forming on his cheekbone, and his lip was split. Leo, my God. I reached out to touch his face, but pulled back, remembering I wasn't supposed to be near him. Who did this? Travis. Leo spat the name like a curse word. I tried to stop him from going into your room. He was looking for something. He said you have a safe. He said you are hiding money. I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. I do not have a safe, Leo. You know that. We live paycheck to paycheck. That is not what Mom says. Leo looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. She told us you have millions, Grandpa. She said Dad left us a huge inheritance when he died. An insurance policy. $500,000. She said you stole it. She said you have been hoarding it while we ate generic cereal and wore thrift store clothes. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. So that was the game. That was the lie she used to turn them against me. Leo, listen to me, I said, gripping his shoulders, risking the jail time. Your father did not have insurance. He died in a car accident with debt. I paid for his funeral by selling my plot of land in the county. There is no secret fortune. Leo looked down, kicking the dirt. She is really convincing, Grandpa. She cries a lot. She says she only left because she was having a breakdown, and when she tried to come back, you threatened to hurt us. She showed us the emails. Those emails are fake, Leo. You know I type with one finger. You know I do not know how to send threats over the internet. I know, Leo said, his voice cracking. Deep down, I know. But Mia believes her. Mom bought her a new iPhone yesterday. She bought her clothes. She is taking her to the mall. She is forgetting who took care of us. Buying affection, I thought bitterly. Using credit cards they probably stole or opened in my name. And Noah. I asked, my throat tight. Noah just cries, Leo said. He hides in the closet. Travis yelled at him yesterday for crying too loud. He told him to man up. That is when I stepped in. That is when he hit me. I saw red, pure blinding rage. I am going to kill him, I whispered. No. Grandpa Leo grabbed my hand. If you do anything, they win. Travis is filming everything. He walks around the house with his phone out. He wants you to attack him. He wants to send you to prison for real so they can have the house and the money they think you have. The boy was 17, but he was smarter than I was in that moment. He was right. It was a trap. Listen to me, Leo, I said, steadying myself. You have to be strong. You have to protect Noah. Do not believe anything they say. I am working on a plan. I need you to be my eyes and ears. Can you do that? Leo nodded, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Yeah. But hurry, Grandpa. They are tearing the house apart. They are ripping up floorboards. They are looking for this money, and they are getting angry that they cannot find it. I froze. Floorboards. Leo listened carefully. In the garden shed under the loose plank in the back corner, there is a metal box. Did they find it? No, nobody goes in the shed. It is full of spiders. Good. Do not touch it. Do not let them near it. That box is the only thing that can save us. I heard a twig snap nearby. We both froze. Go, I whispered. Run home, Leo. Be careful. He vanished into the darkness. I stood there alone under the rusting water tower, my heart heavy with a terrifying realization. They weren't just back for the kids. They were back for a ghost. A fortune that didn't exist. And when they realized the money wasn't there, their frustration would turn on the only targets available. My grandchildren. I drove back to the shop, but I did not sleep. I sat in the dark, holding a wrench, turning it over and over in my hands. Vanessa and Travis were tearing my house apart looking for a pot of gold. But the only thing of value hidden on that property was in the shed. And it wasn't money. It was the truth. The next morning I called Albert. We need to get the restraining order lifted, I said. They are hurting the kids. We have a hearing in 3 days, Albert said. But Harold, unless we have proof of the abuse or proof that Vanessa is unfit, it is going to be your word against hers. And right now she looks like Mother Teresa and you look like a kidnapper. I have proof, I said. But it is in the house. You cannot go in the house, Harold. I know, I said, looking at the layout of my property on the wall map of the shop. I know, but I wasn't planning on walking through the front door. That afternoon, tragedy struck, or rather staged tragedy. I was working at the shop when a police cruiser pulled up. It was Officer Miller again. "Get in, Harold," he said grimly. "What happened?" "It is Travis. He claims you assaulted him." "What? I haven't been near the house." "He has a video." I sat in the interrogation room again, watching a video on a tablet. The footage was shaky. It showed me or someone wearing my old army jacket and a baseball cap rushing at Travis in the driveway swinging a pipe. The figure shouted something muffled and ran off. "That isn't me," I said, pointing at the screen. "Look at the way he runs. He is limping on the left leg. My bad knee is the right one. And that jacket, I haven't worn that in 10 years. It was in the attic." "It looks like you," Harold Miller said. "And Travis has a witness. A neighbor saw it." "Who?" "Mrs. Higgins." Mrs. Higgins was 90 years old and legally blind. They were setting me up. They were escalating. They knew they couldn't find the money, so they were trying to lock me up to have free reign of the property. "I did not do this," I said calmly. "Check the shop cameras. I was under a Ford F-150 all morning." The alibi held up. My shop cameras, time-stamped and clear, saved my life. But the warning was clear. They were getting desperate. They were trying to frame me to get me out of the way permanently. They released me, but the warning was severe. One more incident, real or fake, and they would revoke my bail. I walked out of the station knowing I had run out of time. I couldn't wait for the court hearing. I couldn't wait for the slow wheels of justice. Leo was hurt. Noah was being terrorized. And Mia was being brainwashed. I needed the envelope. The sun was setting as I walked back to my truck. I looked at the sky, watching the storm clouds gather over Chicago. It was going to rain tonight. A heavy downpour. Perfect cover. I wasn't going to break into my house. I was going to invade it. I was going to get the evidence, and I was going to end this charade once and for all. I am 69 years old. My knees hurt. My back aches. But tonight, I wasn't a mechanic. I wasn't a grandfather. I was a Marine on a rescue mission. And God help anyone who stood in my way. The metal bed of a 1995 Chevy Silverado is not designed for a man with a bad hip and a lifetime of hard labor. I lay there wrapped in a wool blanket that smelled of diesel and damp earth, listening to the rain hammer against the roof of the cab. My shop was quiet, but it was the silence of a graveyard, not a home. I had a camping stove set up on the tailgate, a can of cold beans open beside me, and a view that tore my heart out every time I opened my eyes. Through the chain-link fence and across the empty lot, I could see the back of my house. The house I bought in 1982. The house where I held Sarah's hand while she took her last breath. Now it glowed with a warmth I was forbidden to feel. Every light was on. It looked like a cruise ship sailing through the dark, stormy night while I drowned in the wake. I shifted, trying to find a position that didn't make my joints scream. The dampness of the storm was seeping into my bones. I was eating beans from a can with a plastic spoon, while inside my kitchen, Vanessa and that leech, Travis, were probably opening a bottle of wine. I could hear the faint thumping of bass music drifting over the wet grass. They were celebrating. They were toasting to their victory over a senile old man. I sat up, the blanket sliding off my shoulders. I couldn't just lie there. The rain had turned into a deluge, washing away the grime of the city, but it was also washing away something else. I remembered the picture, the portrait of Sarah that Travis had tossed like a frisbee across the yard. I had been pulled away by Albert before I could check on it. I needed to know. I pulled my hood up and stepped out of the truck. The mud sucked at my boots. I walked to the edge of the property line, the invisible wall the judge had built between me and my life. The rain lashed at my face, stinging my eyes. I squinted into the darkness, scanning the base of the old oak tree. There it was, a glint of reflection in the mud. I knew the rules. 100 yards. If I crossed that line, I went to jail. But that was Sarah. I looked up at the house. Shadows moved across the drawn blinds. I saw silhouettes dancing. I saw Travis's distinctive, lanky frame holding a bottle, leaning back, laughing. They were warm. They were dry. They were drunk on my life. I didn't care about the jail. I crossed the line. I moved low, a shadow in the storm. I reached the base of the oak tree and fell to my knees in the slush. My hands frantically brushed away the wet leaves and mud. I found the frame. It was face down. I turned it over with trembling fingers. The glass was shattered, a spiderweb of cracks obscuring her face. Water had seeped in, staining the corner of the photograph, but her eyes were still there. That smile. The smile that had kept me going through deployments and double shifts. I wiped the mud from the glass with my sleeve, my tears mixing with the rain. "I am sorry, Sarah," I whispered, my voice lost in the thunder. I let them in. I let them take it all. I clutched the broken frame to my chest, rocking back on my heels. The cold was biting now, numbing my fingers, but the fire in my chest was hot enough to burn the world down. I looked up at the living room window. The blinds were open just a crack. I could see them clearly now. Vanessa was sitting on my recliner, my chair, her feet up on the coffee table. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a glass of wine in her hand. Travis was pacing the room, gesturing wildly, probably telling some story about how smart he was, how easy it was to trick the old man. They looked like vultures feasting on a carcass. They didn't cook. They didn't clean. I could see pizza boxes stacked on the dining table, the same table where I taught Leo how to do algebra. Then I saw something that made me freeze. Mia walked into the room. She was carrying a tray of food. She looked like a servant. Her shoulders were slumped, her hair messy. She set the tray down in front of Vanessa, who didn't even look at her, just waved a hand, dismissing her. Mia retreated to the corner, sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. They weren't just living in my house. They were enslaving my grandchildren. I gripped the broken picture frame so hard, a shard of glass sliced into my palm. The pain was sharp and grounding. I watched as Travis walked over to Mia and said something, pointing a finger in her face. She shrank back. He laughed and took a slice of pizza, biting into it with exaggerated pleasure, while the girl sat there with nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash through that window and end it right there. But I remembered Leo's warning. They want you to attack. They want to send you to prison, for real. I slowly stood up, shielding Sarah's photo inside my jacket. I backed away into the darkness, leaving the warmth and the light to the monsters. I walked back to my cold metal truck bed, the mud heavy on my boots. I sat there in the dark, cleaning the rest of the mud off the photo with a rag. I propped Sarah up against the wheel well. "Do not worry, honey," I told her, staring at the lit windows of our stolen home. "They are having their party now. They are drinking my wine and sleeping in our bed. But the bill is coming due." I lay back down, the cold metal leaching the heat from my body, but my mind was razor sharp. Let them party. Let them get comfortable. Let them think the old dog is dead. Because tomorrow I wasn't just going to bark. I was going to bite. Inside that house, the air was thick with the smell of stale pepperoni and cheap perfume. Vanessa had turned my living room into her personal throne room. She lay sprawled across the vintage velvet sofa I had bought Sarah for our 25th anniversary, her boots still on, digging into the fabric. She was not grieving. She was not trying to reconnect with the children she had abandoned. She was scrolling through her phone, her face illuminated by the blue light, a glass of my best red wine balancing precariously on her chest. Mia was standing in the kitchen doorway. My granddaughter looked like a ghost. Her eyes were red-rimmed and heavy with exhaustion. She was wearing the same clothes she had on yesterday because Vanessa had not bothered to unpack their bags. "Mom," Mia whispered, her voice trembling. "Can I go to sleep now?" I cleaned the dishes. Vanessa did not even look up from her screen. She just waved a hand dismissively, the wine sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "Did you scrub the counter?" It felt sticky. You know I cannot stand a dirty kitchen, Mia. I did, Mom. I did it twice. Then do it again, Vanessa snapped, her eyes finally snapping up to glare at the 14-year-old girl. And bring me the bottle. This glass is empty. I watched through the crack in the blinds as Mia trudged back into the kitchen. Her shoulders were shaking. She was not being treated like a daughter, she was being treated like a maid. Vanessa had manipulated the system to get custody, not because she wanted to be a mother, but because she wanted a servant. She wanted the image of a family without the work. She sat there in my home drinking my wine while her daughter scrubbed my countertops until her knuckles were raw. Upstairs, the violation was even worse. I knew the layout of my house better than the back of my hand, and I could tell by the shadows moving in the upper windows exactly what was happening. Travis had claimed the master bedroom, but that was not enough for him. He needed space. He needed an office for whatever shady deals he was running. He chose Leo's room. Leo had spent 3 years building a computer from scrap parts I brought him from the shop. It was his pride and joy, sitting on a desk he built himself. Travis did not care. I could hear the thud of heavy objects hitting the floorboards. He was not packing Leo's things, he was throwing them out into the hallway. "Hey, watch it! That is my motherboard." Leo's voice carried through the thin walls, angry and desperate. "Not anymore, kid." Travis's voice was a low rumble of menace. "This is the command center now. You can sleep in the basement with the rat." He meant Noah. They had put my 9-year-old grandson in the unfinished basement on a camping cot while they took over the bedrooms. Travis walked out of the room kicking a box of Leo's comic books down the stairs. He walked into the living room wiping dust from his hands onto his jeans. He looked at Vanessa and shook his head. "Nothing upstairs, babe." I checked the closet. The vents even looked under the floorboards in the closet. The old man is hiding it good. Vanessa sat up, swinging her legs off the couch. Her face twisted into a scowl that made her look decades older. "It has to be here, Travis. He never spends anything. He drives that piece of junk truck, he wears clothes from the 70s. The insurance payout was $500,000, plus the house equity, plus whatever he has been hoarding from the shop. We are talking almost $1 million sitting somewhere in this dump." Travis paced the room, his eyes scanning the walls as if he had X-ray vision. He picked up a ceramic vase my mother had painted and looked inside it before tossing it onto the sofa cushion. "Maybe it is in a bank account." "No." Vanessa stood up, pacing to the window. I checked his mail. No bank statements. He is paranoid. He keeps it cash. I know he does. He probably buried it in the yard or stuffed it in the walls. We just have to tear this place apart until we find it. She turned to Travis, her eyes gleaming with greed. "We have legal guardianship for at least a month before the next hearing. That is 30 days to find the cash. Once we have it, we dump the kids back in the system, sell the house, and we are gone. Mexico. Just like we planned." Travis grinned, grabbing her by the waist. "And the old man? He will die in jail or a nursing home, who cares?" Vanessa laughed, a cold, cruel sound that made my skin crawl. "He served his purpose. He kept the money safe for us." Mia walked back into the room holding the wine bottle. She stopped dead when she heard them. Her face went pale. She looked from her mother to Travis, the bottle trembling in her hand. "You are going to leave us again," Mia whispered. Vanessa spun around, her face shifting instantly from malice to a fake, sickly sweet concern. "Oh, baby, no. We were just joking. Daddy Travis has a weird sense of humor. Come here." She reached out, but Mia took a step back. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in my granddaughter's eyes. The brainwashing was cracking. "Go to bed." "Mia." Vanessa's voice dropped, the sweetness evaporating instantly. "Now. Before I change my mind about letting you keep that phone." Mia ran up the stairs sobbing. Travis watched her go, then turned back to Vanessa. "You need to keep a leash on them. If they talk to the social worker before we find the money, we are screwed." Do not worry. Vanessa poured herself another glass of wine. I have them terrified. They will say whatever I tell them to say. Now grab a crowbar. I want to check behind the fireplace mantel. I watched from the darkness as Travis went to my tool chest, the one he had thrown outside earlier, and retrieved a pry bar. He walked back into the house. Moments later, I heard the sickening crack of wood splintering. They were literally tearing my life apart, looking for a fortune that did not exist. They were destroying the home I built to find a ghost, and all the while my grandchildren were cowering in the dark, listening to the destruction, realizing slowly and painfully that the monsters were not under the bed. The monsters were drinking wine in the living room. The silence under the water tower was heavy, broken only by the distant hum of the highway and the ragged breathing of a boy who felt his entire world crumbling. Leo stood just out of reach, his face half hidden in the shadows, but I could see the tears tracking through the dirt on his cheeks. He looked so much like his father in that moment, it made my chest ache. I realized then that arguing about bank accounts and insurance policies was useless. Vanessa had had 8 years to build a fantasy in her head, and 3 days to plant it in his. Logic wouldn't break the spell. Only the truth would. Leo, I said, my voice soft but firm, the way I used to talk to him when he scraped his knee. I am not going to fight you. I am not going to yell. I just want you to ask yourself one question. He looked up, sniffing, wiping his nose on his sleeve. What question? He mumbled. If I had $500,000, why did I sell your mother's wedding ring to pay for your braces? Leo froze. He remembered that day. He was 12. He needed braces badly. His teeth were causing him pain. I told him I had saved up, but he had seen me walking out of the pawn shop downtown. He had never said anything, but I knew he saw. Vanessa does not know about the ring, I continued, stepping closer. She does not know about the overtime shifts. She does not know about the nights I ate toast for dinner so you 3 could have meat. She does not know because she was not there, Leo. I saw the armor crack. The anger in his eyes wavered, replaced by confusion. But the papers, Grandpa, Leo whispered. They looked real. It had the bank logo. It had Dad's name. It is easy to print a logo, Leo. It is hard to fake 8 years of love. He looked down at his shoes, kicking a piece of gravel. She said, if we find the money, we can move to California. She said we can have a big house with a pool. She promised. And there it was. The hook. She wasn't just selling them a lie about the past. She was selling them a dream for the future. She was buying their loyalty with currency that didn't exist. Leo, listen to me. There is no money. There never was. Travis is tearing the house apart right now, isn't he? He is ripping up the floors. He is smashing the walls. Leo nodded slowly. Yeah. He is going crazy. He keeps screaming that you moved it. He is going to keep destroying things, Leo. And when he destroys the whole house and finds nothing, what do you think is going to happen? Leo looked up at me, and for the first time I saw fear. Real fear. Not of me, but of the situation. He is going to get mad, Leo whispered. He is already mad, son. When he realizes the pot of gold is empty, he is going to turn that anger on the only people left in the house. You, Mia, and Noah. I reached out, and this time Leo didn't pull away. I put my hand on his shoulder. I need you to be smart, Leo. I need you to go back there and pretend. Pretend you believe her. Pretend you are helping them look. Buy me time. Time for what? Time to show the judge the truth. Leo looked at me, searching my face for any sign of deception. He must have seen the grandfather who taught him to ride a bike, the man who sat in the front row of every graduation, because he took a deep breath and nodded. Okay, Grandpa. I believe you. But you have to hurry. Travis, he has a gun. I saw it in his waistband. My blood ran cold. A gun. This just went from a domestic dispute to a hostage situation. "Go home, Leo," I said, giving his shoulder a squeeze. "Keep your head down. Protect Noah. I am coming for you. I promise." He turned and ran back into the darkness. I watched him go until he was just a shadow against the fence. I climbed back into the truck, my hands shaking, not from the cold, but from the rage boiling in my gut. Vanessa wasn't just a con artist. She was a ticking time bomb. She had dragged a violent man with a gun into my home thinking she was going to rob a millionaire. When that bomb went off, my grandkids were going to be in the blast radius. I looked at the layout of the property in my mind. The shed. The envelope. It was the only way to stop this madness without getting anyone killed. But to get to it, I had to walk right past a man with a gun who was tearing my floorboards apart, looking for a fortune that was never there. I started the truck. The engine coughed and roared to life. I wasn't going to sleep tonight. I had a mission. And unlike Vanessa's fantasy of easy money, my mission was very real. I sat in my truck watching Leo walk up the driveway. I told myself I would just watch him get inside safely, then I would leave. But the front door didn't open. Instead, the porch light flicked on blindingly bright in the darkness. Travis stepped out. He was holding a beer can and swaying slightly. Even from down the street, I could see the rage in his posture. He said something to Leo. Leo stepped back, shaking his head. Then Travis lunged. He grabbed my grandson by the collar of his hoodie and threw him against the siding of the house. I heard the thud. I heard Leo cry out. My vision tunneled. I forgot the court order. I forgot the judge's warning. I forgot Leo's own plea for me to stay away. I was out of the truck and sprinting across the wet lawn before my brain could even process the consequences. Travis raised his hand and struck Leo across the face, a heavy open-handed blow that sent the boy crumpling to the concrete. "Get away from him, you coward!" I roared. Travis spun around. He didn't look surprised. He looked delighted. He reached into his pocket, but instead of a weapon, he pulled out his phone. He held it up, the flashlight beam hitting my face just as I reached the porch steps. I grabbed him by the leather jacket, intending to throw him off the property, but he went limp instantly. He fell back onto the grass, screaming in a voice that was suddenly terrified and loud enough to wake the entire block. "Help, he is killing me. The old man is crazy. Call the police." I stood there, heaving my fists clenched, standing over him, while he cowered on the lawn, keeping the camera trained perfectly on my angry face. Behind him, Leo was trying to stand up, blood trickling from his lip, but Travis did not film that. He only filmed the 6'2" Marine standing over a prone man. "You fell for it, old man," Travis whispered, just low enough that the phone wouldn't pick it up, but loud enough for me to hear. He grinned, a smile of pure malice. "Now you go to jail and we take the house apart, brick by brick." Sirens wailed in the distance. They were already coming. He must have called them before he even walked out the door. I looked at Leo, who was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. I had tried to protect him, but I had just handed the enemy the exact weapon they needed to destroy me. 2 days later, I stood on the cracked pavement of the sidewalk across the street, watching a carnival unfold in my own front yard. I had posted bail again, thanks to Albert mortgaging his own cabin upstate, but the freedom felt like a joke. I was a prisoner in my own town. The smell of charcoal and grilled meat wafted through the air, thick and taunting. It was Saturday afternoon, and Vanessa was hosting a barbecue. But this wasn't just a family cookout. It was a press conference disguised as a picnic. There were balloons tied to my mailbox, red and blue ones bobbing in the wind. A banner hung across the porch that read, "Welcome home, the healing begins." Parked right next to Travis's oil-leaking sports car was a news van from the local channel. A cameraman was setting up a tripod on the lawn, trampling the petunias I had planted with Noah last spring. I pulled my baseball cap lower over my eyes, leaning against a telephone pole just at the edge of the 100-yard restriction line. I watched as my neighbor's people I had known for 30 years filed into my yard, shaking Travis's hand like he was a war hero. There was Bill from down the street, whose mower I had fixed for free every summer for a decade. There was Susan, the librarian, who had praised me for raising the kids alone just last month. Now she was hugging Vanessa, wiping a tear from her eye. Vanessa had transformed. Gone were the expensive clothes and the haughty attitude. Today she was wearing a simple floral dress and a cardigan. She looked modest, humble. She looked like the victim she was pretending to be. She walked to the center of the porch and clapped her hands. The cameraman swung his lens toward her. The neighbors quieted down, holding paper plates piled high with food, paid for by my stolen credit cards. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound brave. I know there have been rumors. I know it is hard to understand why a mother would stay away for 8 years." She paused, looking down at her shoes, then lifting her chin as if fighting back tears. "I stayed away because I was afraid. My father, Harold, he is a powerful man in his own mind. He told me if I ever came back, he would make sure I never saw the sun again. He told me he would hurt Leo and Mia and Noah if I tried to rescue them." A gasp went through the crowd. Susan covered her mouth. Bill shook his head, muttering something angry. "Lies!" I whispered, my fingernails digging into the wood of the telephone pole. "All lies." I lived in terror, Vanessa continued, wiping a fake tear. But I worked. I scrubbed floors. I waited tables. I saved every penny to hire a lawyer to come back here and fight for my babies. And now we are finally safe. Travis stepped up beside her, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulders. He looked the part of the devoted stepfather perfectly. "We just want peace," he said, his voice deep and serious. "We forgive Harold. We do. We hope he gets the mental help he obviously needs. But he cannot be near these children. Not ever again." The crowd broke into applause. My neighbors, my friends were clapping for the monsters who were dismantling my life. It was a masterclass in manipulation. Then the reporter stepped forward, a microphone in her hand. "Vanessa, how are the children adjusting to their freedom?" Vanessa smiled a sad, brave smile. "It is a process. They have been brainwashed for so long. They are scared. But we are loving them back to health, one day at a time." I couldn't take it anymore. The injustice was physically painful, like a band tightening around my chest. I stepped away from the pole. I didn't cross the line, but I made myself visible. "Tell them about the gambling debts. Vanessa." I shouted, my voice carrying over the lawn. "Tell them about the $500,000 you think is hidden in the walls." The party stopped. Every head turned toward me. The camera swung around the lens, focusing on me like the eye of a weapon. "Get out of here, Harold!" Bill yelled, stepping forward to the edge of the driveway. He looked furious. His face was red. "Bill, I fixed your roof," I said, spreading my hands. "You know me. You know I love those kids." "I do not know you," Bill spat back. "I know a monster who kidnapped 3 kids and threatened his own daughter. You make me sick." "Go away, old man," someone else shouted. "Leave them alone." Travis stood on the porch, smirking. He whispered something to Vanessa, then pointed at me. "He is harassing us again," he shouted for the benefit of the camera. "He is stalking us. Someone call the police." I saw Susan, the librarian, pick up a soda can and throw it. It fell short, landing in the street, but the message was clear. I wasn't just a suspect to them. I was a pariah. They didn't see a grandfather fighting for his family. They saw the villain Vanessa had painted for them. I looked at the window of Leo's room. The curtain moved just slightly. I knew he was watching. He was seeing his grandfather being humiliated, being chased away by the community. I realized then that I couldn't win this in the court of public opinion. Vanessa was too good at lying, and people were too eager to believe a pretty crying woman over a grumpy old mechanic. I turned my back on them, the jeers and insults hitting me like stones. I walked away down the street, my shadow stretching long and thin in the afternoon sun. They could have the neighbors. They could have the press. They could have the lies. I had something better. I had a memory of a loose floorboard in the garden shed, and I knew that tonight, while they were busy celebrating their victory, I was going to change the rules of the game. I wasn't going to argue with them anymore. I was going to destroy them with the one thing they couldn't fake. I drove straight to Albert's house, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Albert lives in a small bungalow on the edge of town, the kind of place that smells like old books and pipe tobacco. He was waiting for me on the porch. He didn't say a word, just opened the door and poured me a glass of whiskey. We sat in his study surrounded by towering stacks of legal briefs from cases he had won 30 years ago. "They are winning, Albert," I said, staring into the amber liquid. "The whole town is on their side. They think I am a monster." Albert sighed, leaning back in his creaky leather chair. He looked tired. He had leveraged his own home to bail me out, and I was failing him. "The court of public opinion is a kangaroo court, Harold," he said, his voice raspy. "But the real court, that is where we are in trouble. I looked at the filings today. O'Connor is good. He is dirty, but he is good. He has painted a picture of a controlling, paranoid old man who snapped. And with that video Travis staged," he paused, looking me dead in the eye. "If we go into that hearing on Monday with just your word against theirs, you are going to lose. You will lose the house. You will lose the kids. And you will probably do time for assault." I felt the weight of the world crushing my chest. "So that is it. It is over." "Not yet." Albert leaned forward, his eyes sharp behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "Do you remember 8 years ago, the night she left? You came here. You were a wreck. You told me you made her sign something." I shook my head, the memory hazy with grief and rage. "I made her sign a lot of things, Albert. I do not remember." "Think, Harold. You said you gave her money. You said you wanted insurance. You said you put it somewhere safe because you did not trust banks and you did not trust her." The fog in my brain cleared. It hit me like a physical blow. The night Vanessa left. The rain. The desperate negotiation in my kitchen while Noah screamed in his crib. The cash I had pulled from the wall safe. And the paper. The shed, I whispered. What Albert asked. I put it in the shed, under the floorboards beneath the generator. I wrapped it in plastic and put it in a metal ammo box. I buried it there because I knew deep down she would come back for money eventually. Albert's eyes widened. "What is in the box, Harold?" "The truth," I said. "The absolute, undeniable truth. Is it still there?" "I have not moved the generator in 8 years." Albert slammed his hand on the desk, a grin spreading across his face. "That is it. That is the silver bullet. If we have that, O'Connor's case falls apart. We do not just win custody, we send them to prison." Then his smile faded. "But there is a problem. The shed is on the property. It is covered by the restraining order. If you set foot on that grass, you are violating bail conditions. If they catch you, you go to jail until the trial and the evidence. Well, if they find it first, they will destroy it." I stood up, the whiskey forgotten. "They are looking for money, Albert. They are tearing up the floorboards in the house. They have not checked the shed yet, because it is full of spiders and rusty tools. But they will. Once they realize the house is empty, they will move to the garage and then the shed." "We have to get it tonight," Albert said. "But I cannot go. I cannot walk that well anymore, and I cannot carry a generator. And I cannot ask you to do it. It is illegal. It is dangerous." I looked at the map of my property I had drawn in my mind 1,000 times. I knew every shadow, every loose fence board, every blind spot. "It is a black op," I said, my old military training kicking in and out, no engagement. "No, secure the package and retreat. Harold, if they catch you. If they catch me, I go to prison. I finished for him, but if I do not do this, those kids lose their lives. Leo is getting beaten. Noah is being starved. Mia is being turned into a stranger. I am not leaving them behind. Albert looked at me for a long, long time. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a set of bolt cutters. The fence behind the shed borders the woods, he said. It is the blind spot of the streetlights. If you go in through the back, you might have a chance. I took the bolt cutters. They were heavy, cold, and solid. I will need a distraction, I said. Albert nodded slowly. I can make a call. I can trigger a noise complaint on the other side of the neighborhood. It might draw the patrol car away for 10 minutes. That is all you have. 10 minutes is all I need, I said. I walked out of Albert's house feeling a strange sense of calm. The desperation was gone, replaced by mission focus. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a soldier. And I was going back into enemy territory to retrieve the weapon that would end the war. The storm that night was not just rain, it was a curtain of water that turned the world into a blur of gray and black. It was the kind of weather that drives sensible people indoors and keeps the dogs under the porch, but for me it was the only cover I had. I slipped through the gap in the fence where the woods met my property line, the bolt cutters heavy in my hand. My bad knee screamed with every step sinking into the mud, but I pushed the pain down deep where I kept all my other regrets. The garden shed sat at the far edge of the backyard, a wooden structure I had reinforced myself 10 years ago. It was dark, silent, and looked abandoned, but I knew better. I moved like a ghost, staying low, using the noise of the thunder to mask the sound of my breathing. I reached the door and found the padlock still in place. Good. They had not breached the perimeter yet. I used my key, turning it slowly, waiting for the click that would either open the door to my salvation or alert the monsters inside my house. The lock gave way. I slipped inside and gently closed the door behind me, leaving it just a crack open for air. The smell hit me instantly. Gasoline, sawdust, and the musty scent of old canvas. It was the smell of my sanctuary. I stood there in the pitch black, waiting for my eyes to adjust. The rain drummed relentlessly on the tin roof, creating a deafening cacophony that isolated me from the world. I took a step toward the back corner where the generator sat. Underneath it was the loose floorboard. Underneath that was the ammo box. I was 3 feet away when the door to the backyard patio swung open. I froze. Through the crack in the shed door, I saw a beam of light slice through the rain. 2 figures stepped out onto the covered patio just 20 feet away. They were arguing, their voices raised, but fighting against the roar of the storm. I crouched down behind the riding mower, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. It was Travis and Vanessa. They weren't coming to the shed. They were coming outside to smoke and scream where the kids wouldn't hear them. Travis paced the small concrete slab of the patio, the lit end of his cigarette glowing like an angry red eye in the dark. He kicked a plastic chair, sending it skidding across the wet concrete. Monday. Vanessa, he shouted, his voice carrying over the wind. They said Monday. Do you know what happens on Monday if I do not have the cash? Vanessa was leaning against the sliding glass door, hugging herself against the damp chill. We will find it, Travis, she said, but her voice lacked the confidence she showed in public. We just need more time. He hid it well. The old man is crafty. Crafty, Travis spat on the ground. He is a mechanic, Vanessa. He is a grease monkey. He is not a financial genius. If there was $500,000 in this house, we would have found it by now. We ripped up the master bedroom. We checked the vents. We checked the freezer. Nothing. He stepped closer to her, invading her space. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands twitched. He was a desperate man. Vinny does not take IOUs, Vanessa. He does not care about your dad's missing millions. He cares about the 50 grand I owe him from the tracks. And he told me if I do not have it, he is going to start breaking fingers. And not just mine. My blood ran cold. $50,000. That was the debt. That was why they were here. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about reunification. It was about a gambling debt to a loan shark named Vinny. They were desperate rats trapped in a corner, and they were willing to tear my house down to find a way out. Vanessa reached out and touched Travis's arm, trying to soothe him, but he flinched away. Travis, baby, listen to me. The money is here. Jackson's insurance policy paid out $500,000. I saw the papers before I left. Harold was the beneficiary because he was the legal guardian. He never spent it. Look at how they live. They eat generic cereal. He drives a truck that is falling apart. He hoarded it, Travis. He kept it all for himself just to spite me. I almost gasped aloud. Jackson. My first son-in-law. Vanessa's first husband. He died in a motorcycle accident 9 years ago. There was no insurance policy. He hadn't paid the premiums in 6 months before the crash. The paperwork she saw was a denial letter, not a payout. She had built this entire fantasy, this entire crusade on a delusion she created to justify her own greed. She convinced herself I was a thief, so she wouldn't have to feel like a deserter. It is $500,000, Travis, she hissed. That pays off Vinny and buys us the condo in Cabo. We just have to break him. We have to make him talk, how Travis growled. He is out on bail. He is playing the victim. We press harder, Vanessa said, her voice dropping to a register that was pure venom. We use the kids. We tell him Leo is sick, or that Noah got hurt. We make him desperate. He will offer the money to save them. He loves those brats more than he ever loved me, she added with a bitterness that tasted like bile even from 20 feet away. Travis took a long drag from his cigarette, the embers illuminating a cruel smile. Or we just sell what we can, he said. If we cannot find the cash, we liquidate the assets. The tools in the garage, the electronics, the copper wiring in the walls if we have to. And the kid, Travis added, looking back at the house. What kid? Vanessa asked. The little one. Noah. I stopped breathing. My hand gripped the cold metal of the mower so hard my knuckles popped. What about Noah? Vanessa asked, her voice hesitant. I know a guy in the city, Travis said casually, as if discussing the weather. He handles adoptions, private adoptions, fast track. Wealthy couples who don't ask questions about paperwork. A healthy white boy like that. He is worth 40, maybe 50 grand up front. Vanessa was silent for a long moment. I prayed to a God I hadn't spoken to in years that she would slap him, that she would scream, that she would show 1 ounce of maternal instinct. Is it safe? She asked. Safe as houses, Travis shrugged. We tell the police he ran away, or that the old man came back and took him. It adds to the kidnapping narrative. It solves the debt, and it gets rid of a mouth to feed. I realized then that I was shaking, not from the cold, from a rage so pure and white-hot it threatened to blind me. They were discussing selling my grandson like he was a used car. They were plotting to traffic a human being to pay off a bookie. I will think about it, Vanessa said softly. Let's just look for the cash one more time. They turned and went back inside, sliding the glass door shut and locking it. The light vanished, leaving me in the darkness of the shed, with the sound of the rain and the pounding of my own heart. I sank to the floor, leaning my back against the mower. I felt sick, physically ill. I had known they were bad. I knew they were greedy, but this was evil. This was a level of depravity I hadn't prepared for. They were not just occupying my house. They were dismantling my family piece by piece. I looked at the generator in the corner. The envelope underneath it didn't just hold the proof of abandonment anymore. It held the only thing that could stop a murder. Because that is what this was. Selling a child into the unknown was a death sentence. I crawled over to the generator. It was heavy cast iron and steel. I braced my back against the wall and pushed with my legs, ignoring the fire in my bad hip. It slid a few inches with a grinding scrape that sounded like a gunshot in the small space. I froze, waiting for the door to open again. Nothing happened. The thunder rolled overhead, masking my movements. I pried up the loose floorboard. The soil underneath was dry and cool. I dug my fingers into the dirt, feeling for the metal box. There it was. Cold, hard, real. I pulled the ammo box out and opened the latch. The plastic-wrapped envelope was inside, dry and pristine. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of it. This was 8 years of lies. This was the contract she signed. This was the video footage on the thumb drive. This was the end of Vanessa. But as I tucked the envelope into my jacket, I realized something terrifying. The intel I had just gathered, the conversation about the mafia and the adoption, it wasn't in the envelope. It wasn't recorded. It was just my word against theirs again. I needed to get out. I needed to get this to Albert. But as I stood up ready to make my exit, the shed door creaked. It wasn't the wind. A beam of light hit me, pinning me against the back wall. "I knew you were here," a voice said. Wrong. It wasn't Travis. It wasn't Vanessa. It was Mia. She stood in the doorway holding a flashlight, her face pale and terrified. She was wearing her pajamas and rain boots. Behind her, the storm raged, but in the shed, the silence was absolute. She saw the box. She saw the envelope in my hand. And then she looked at my face. "Grandpa," she whispered. "Mia, honey, listen to me." I started taking a step forward. She stepped back, raising the flashlight like a weapon. Her eyes darted from me to the house. "Mom was right," she said, her voice trembling. "You came back for the money. You are stealing it." "No, Mia, this is not money. This is papers. This is the truth." "Liar," she screamed. And then before I could stop her, before I could explain about the mafia and the adoption and the danger, she turned her head toward the house and yelled with all the air in her lungs. "Mom, Travis, he is in the shed." The lights in the house flared. The back door slammed open. I saw Travis' silhouette sprinting across the patio, something dark and metallic in his hand. I was trapped. I had the evidence, but I had lost the element of surprise. And now I had to fight my way out of a steel box against a man who had nothing left to lose. The scream cut through the storm like a siren. It wasn't a cry of fear, it was a summons. I looked at my granddaughter, the girl whose scraped knees I had bandaged 100 times, and I saw a stranger. Her eyes were hard, reflecting the beam of the flashlight. She wasn't seeing her grandfather. She was seeing the thief her mother had warned her about. The obstacle standing between her and the shopping sprees, the new phone, the fantasy life in California. "Mia, don't do this," I pleaded, stepping toward her, my hands raised in surrender. "I am not stealing anything. This is for you, to save you. Stay back," she yelled, swinging the heavy flashlight like a club. "Mom said you were a liar. She said you hid the money to control us. She bought me a dress for the dance, Grandpa. She promised me a car when I turned 16. What did you ever give me? Chores. Homework." Her words hit me harder than any punch. I had given her a home. I had given her stability. I had given her love when her mother treated her like a disposable accessory. But in the face of dazzling promises and expensive bribes, my years of sacrifice meant nothing. I was just the old man who made her do the dishes. "She is using you, Mia," I said, my voice cracking. "She doesn't have the money for a car. She is in debt to bad people." "Shut up," she screamed again. Then the doorway darkened. Travis didn't stop to ask questions. He hit me like a linebacker. One second I was standing, the next I was slamming into the workbench, my breath leaving me in a whoosh of pain. The impact sent jars of nails and screws cascading down around us, a rain of steel to match the storm outside. I tried to fight back. I really did. I drove an elbow into his ribs and heard him grunt. But I am 69 years old, with a bad hip, and he is a 30-year-old desperate criminal fueled by adrenaline and greed. He grabbed my jacket and threw me to the ground. My head cracked against the concrete floor, and for a moment the world went white. When my vision cleared, Travis was straddling my chest, his knees pinning my arms. He was panting, his face twisted into a rictus of triumph. He pressed the barrel of a pistol against my forehead. The cold metal was a shock against my skin. "Do not move, old man," he spat saliva hitting my face. "Give me a reason. Please give me a reason." I froze. I looked past him to the doorway. Vanessa had arrived. She stood behind Mia, her hands on her daughter's shoulders. She wasn't horrified. She was smiling. It was a small, satisfied smile that made my stomach turn. "Good job, baby," Vanessa cooed to Mia, stroking her hair. "You were so brave. You protected our family from the thief." Mia looked down at me, pinned and bleeding on the dirty floor. For a second, I saw her lip tremble. I saw the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest while we watched cartoons. But then Vanessa whispered something in her ear, probably a promise of another trip to the mall or a new pair of shoes, and the mask slammed back down. Mia nodded and looked away, staring at the wall, refusing to meet my eyes. "Check his pockets," Vanessa ordered, stepping into the shed, her expensive boots avoiding the puddle of oil near my head. "He has it." Mia said he dug it up. Travis reached into my jacket, roughly patting me down. His hand found the bulge. He ripped the ammo box from my grip. I tried to hold on, my fingers scrabbling against the metal, but he backhanded me across the jaw. The taste of copper filled my mouth. "Let go," he snarled. He wrenched the box free. He sat back on his heels, holding it up like a trophy. The green metal box was still covered in damp earth from its 8-year burial. "This is it," Travis said, his eyes wide with greed. "This is the retirement fund, babe. It is heavy. Open it." Vanessa said, her voice breathless. "Open it now." I lay there gasping for air, looking up at the water stains on the shed ceiling. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. They thought they had won. They thought they were holding $500,000. "Mia, go inside," Vanessa said, her eyes fixed on the box. "This is grown-up business." "But Mom, you said," Mia started. "Go inside." Vanessa snapped, her mask slipping for just a fraction of a second. "Take your phone and go to your room. Put your headphones on." Mia flinched. She looked at me one last time. "I am sorry, Grandpa," she whispered so low only I could hear it. "But I want a mom. I just want a mom." She turned and ran back into the rain, the flashlight beam dancing wildly through the dark yard. I watched her go, my heart breaking in two. She had betrayed me, yes, but she was just a child starving for affection from the one person who had denied it to her. Vanessa had weaponized that hunger. She had turned my granddaughter's love into a knife and stabbed me in the back with it. Travis stood up, holding the box. He kicked me in the ribs, not hard enough to break them, but hard enough to remind me who was in charge. "Get up," he ordered, waving the gun toward the house. "You are coming with us. We are going to count this money together. And then we are going to decide what to do with a loose end like you." He hauled me to my feet. I swayed, dizzy and sick. Vanessa was already walking back to the house, shielding her hair from the rain. She looked back over her shoulder. "Bring him to the kitchen," she said. "I want to see the look on his face when we take everything he ever saved." I stumbled forward, the barrel of the gun pressed against my spine. We walked out into the storm, leaving the sanctuary of the shed behind. I was beaten. I was captured. And my secret weapon, the one thing that could save us all, was now in the hands of the enemy. But as the rain washed the blood from my lip, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew what was in that box. And I knew that when Travis opened it, the real nightmare wasn't going to end. It was going to begin. The kitchen lights were blinding after the darkness of the shed. Travis shoved me into a chair, the one at the head of the table where I used to sit for Sunday dinners. He stood over me, breathing hard, the gun still in his hand, but his eyes were fixed on the metal ammo box sitting on the Formica table. It looked like a dirty relic of war sitting there amidst the pizza boxes and empty wine bottles. Vanessa was practically vibrating with anticipation. She stood on the other side of the table, her hands gripping the edge so hard her knuckles were white. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated. It was the look of an addict about to get a fix. "Open it," she whispered. "Open it, Travis. $500,000. Travis holstered the gun in the back of his jeans, a dangerous move, but greed makes men careless. He rubbed his hands together, wiping the rain and grime onto his pants. He reached for the latch on the box. It was rusted stiff. He grunted, straining against the metal, until it gave way with a loud snap that echoed in the silent house. He threw the lid back. Inside lay the thick manila envelope wrapped in layers of heavy plastic to protect it from the damp earth. "There it is," Travis breathed. He pulled it out. It felt substantial in his hands. I sat there, my ribs aching, blood drying on my chin, and I let a small smile touch my lips. They were so sure. They were so convinced that the world worked the way they wanted it to, that they hadn't stopped to think about who they were dealing with. Travis ripped the plastic off. He tore the top of the envelope open. He reached inside his fingers, grasping for the thick stack of bills he imagined was there. His hand froze. He frowned, digging deeper. He turned the envelope upside down and shook it. Nothing fell out. Not a single dollar. Not a check. Not even a note. It was empty. The silence that filled the kitchen was heavier than the storm outside. It was a vacuum sucking the air out of the room. Travis looked into the envelope, then looked at the table, then looked at the floor, as if the money had somehow turned invisible and floated away. "What is this?" he whispered, his voice trembling with a rage that was just starting to boil. "Where is it?" Vanessa snatched the envelope from him, tearing it apart completely, ripping the paper to shreds. "It is empty," she screamed. "It is just air." "You said it was heavy." "It was the box," Travis yelled back, kicking the table. "The box was heavy. The envelope is empty." He spun on me, grabbing me by the collar of my jacket and hauling me out of the chair. He slammed me against the refrigerator, sending magnets and drawings by Noah clattering to the floor. "Where is it, old man?" he roared, saliva hitting my face. "You dug it up. I saw you holding it. Where is the money?" I looked him dead in the eye, and I laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound, but it felt good. "You really think I would leave my leverage under a shed for 8 years, I said. Travis pressed his forearm against my throat, cutting off my air. "Talk, or I swear to God I will put a bullet in your knee." I gasped for breath, but kept my eyes locked on his. "I moved those papers the day after Vanessa left," I choked out. "I mailed them to my lawyer. He has been holding them in a safety deposit box since 2015. That box in the shed. It was just a decoy, a trap for rats like you." Vanessa let out a shriek of pure frustration. She swept the pizza boxes off the table, sending them flying across the room. "He is lying," she screamed. "He is lying, Travis. He spent it. He spent all of it on himself while I was starving." "There never was any money, Vanessa," I said, my voice rising. "Just the proof. Proof that you abandoned your children. Proof that you sold them." Travis let go of me and I slid down the front of the fridge to the floor, gasping. He didn't look at me. He looked at the clock on the microwave. The numbers glowed ominously. "Monday," he muttered. "Monday is coming." He grabbed a heavy cast-iron skillet from the stove and swung it. It smashed into the cabinets, splintering the wood. He swung again, shattering the glass front of the oven. He was losing control completely, the fear of the loan shark overriding any sense of self-preservation. $50,000, he screamed, swinging the skillet like a hammer. I need $50,000 by Monday, or Vinny kills me. He turned to Vanessa, his eyes wild and bloodshot. If I go down, you go down with me. You told me the money was here. You promised me. Travis. Please, Vanessa backed away, her hands raised. We can find another way. We can sell the truck. We can sell the tools. Not enough, he roared, smashing the skillet into the toaster, sending plastic flying. It is not enough. He stopped, panting, his chest heaving. He looked down at me, huddled on the floor. Then he looked up at the ceiling, toward the bedrooms where Leo and Mia were hiding, toward the basement where Noah was locked away. A dark, terrifying calm settled over his face. He dropped the skillet. It clanged loudly against the tile. He pulled the gun from his waistband again. If I don't get my money, nobody walks out of this house, he said. His voice dropped dead quiet. He walked over to the kitchen drawers and started ripping them open until he found the duct tape. He tossed it to Vanessa. Tie him up, he ordered, pointing the gun at my head. Tie him to the chair. Then go get the kids. Bring them all down here. Travis, what are you doing? Vanessa asked, her voice trembling. If the old man won't give us the money, maybe he will trade for it, Travis said, a sick smile spreading across his face. We are going to have a little family meeting. And if I do not find 50 grand in this house in the next hours, I'm going to start subtracting family members until I do. He cocked the gun. The sound was loud and final in the small kitchen. Do it, Vanessa. Tie him up, or you are first. I watched as my daughter, the girl I used to carry on my shoulders, picked up the tape with shaking hands. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the gun. She chose her survival over mine, over her children's. I let her tape my wrists to the chair, not fighting because I knew any resistance now would just get me shot. But my mind was racing. The envelope was empty, but the trap wasn't. I just needed to keep them talking. I just needed to keep my grandkids alive long enough for the final piece of the puzzle to fall into place. Because Travis didn't know it, but he had just started a countdown he couldn't stop. And Vinny the loan shark wasn't the only one coming for him. I sat there, my wrists taped to the wooden chair, the circulation already cutting off in my fingers. Travis had paced into the living room, still muttering about the money, leaving me alone for a split second. That is when the pantry door creaked open. I had not seen him slip in there. My grandson Noah, small and trembling, stepped out into the harsh kitchen light. He was clutching a smashed Hostess cupcake in his little hand, the kind I used to buy him after school. He didn't look at the broken cabinets or the shattered glass. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a terror no 9-year-old should ever know. Grandpa, he whispered, his voice shaking. You looked hungry. I saved this for you. He took a step toward me, holding out the squashed cake like it was a lifeline. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. In the middle of this war zone, while men with guns threatened to kill us all, this boy was worried that I hadn't eaten. Noah, run, I rasped. Go hide. He didn't listen. He took another step, reaching for my bound hands. Eat, Grandpa, please. Then the door to the hallway slammed open. Vanessa stormed in. She saw him instantly. She didn't see a son trying to feed his grandfather. She saw disobedience. She saw a nuisance. She crossed the room in 2 strides and snatched the cupcake from his hand, squeezing it until the filling oozed through her fingers. I told you to stay in your room, she screamed, flinging the cake onto the dirty floor. I just wanted to help him, Noah cried, shrinking back. Help him, Vanessa grabbed him by the arm, her nails digging into his soft skin. You want to help the man who stole our money? You want to feed the enemy. She dragged him toward the basement door. Noah kicked and screamed, his little boots sliding uselessly on the linoleum. Mommy, please, no, he begged. I am sorry. I am sorry. I struggled against the tape, the chair legs screeching against the floor. Leave him alone, Vanessa, I roared. He is a child! Put him down! She ignored me. She yanked the basement door open. A draft of cold, damp air rushed up, smelling of mold and darkness. "Since you like sneaking around in the dark, you can stay in the dark," she spat. "No dinner, no water, no light. Maybe that will teach you whose side you're supposed to be on." She threw him down the stairs. I heard him tumble, his small body hitting the wooden steps with sickening thuds. He landed on the concrete floor below, crying out in pain. Vanessa slammed the door and threw the deadbolt, locking him in the black void. "Mommy, please, it is dark." Noah's voice came through the wood, muffled and terrified. "There are spiders. Please, Mommy." Vanessa leaned her forehead against the door, breathing hard. She didn't look like a mother. She looked like a monster who had shed her skin. She turned to me, her eyes dead and cold. "One down," she whispered. "Two to go." She walked past me to the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and took a long drink, ignoring the sobbing of her son beneath the floorboards. I sat there listening to my grandson beg for light, and I realized that Travis wasn't the only danger in this house. Vanessa was broken, and she was going to break everyone else before the night was over. The house shook with the violence of the storm, but upstairs in the room that used to be his sanctuary, Leo was shaking for a different reason. He had heard everything: the screams, the thuds of Noah falling down the stairs, his mother's cruel dismissal. He sat on the floor, clutching his knees, staring at the poster of the solar system he and his grandfather had put up when he was 10. He realized then that the dream of California, the promise of a swimming pool, it was all a lie. His mother didn't come back to save them. She came back to feed them to the wolves. She had thrown Noah into the dark like garbage. A newfound resolve hardened in his chest. He stood up, wiping his face. He wasn't a child anymore. He was the big brother, and big brothers protected their own. He grabbed the heavy metal baseball bat he kept under his bed, a gift from Harold for his 13th birthday. He moved to the door, listening. Downstairs, Travis was shouting again, something about ripping up the floorboards in the living room. His mother was crying, a sound that used to break his heart, but now just sounded like noise. Leo crept down the hallway, avoiding the creaky floorboards he knew by heart, thanks to years of sneaking snacks at midnight. He reached the top of the stairs and peered down. Travis was in the living room, back turned, swinging a crowbar at the wall. Vanessa was in the kitchen, pacing. The basement door was just off the kitchen. Leo moved fast. He didn't sneak. He charged. He hit the bottom of the stairs and sprinted for the basement door. Vanessa saw him too late. "Leo." "What are you doing?" she shrieked. He ignored her. He reached the door and slammed the deadbolt back. He threw the door open. "Noah," he yelled into the dark. "Come on!" Noah scrambled up the stairs, sobbing, clinging to Leo's leg. Leo hoisted him up, shielding him with his body. He turned to face his mother, the bat raised. "Stay back," he warned, his voice steady despite the fear pounding in his veins. "Don't touch him." Vanessa took a step back, her eyes wide. She looked at the bat, then at her son's face. She saw something there she didn't recognize: contempt. Travis ran into the kitchen, crowbar in hand. He saw the scene and snarled, "Put the bat down, kid, or I'll put you down." Leo didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket with his free hand and pulled out his phone. He didn't dial 911. He dialed the only number that mattered. He put the phone to his ear, his eyes locked on Travis. "Grandpa," he said, his voice loud and clear. "Help us." I was still taped to the chair, bruising my wrists against the wood, when my burner phone, tucked deep in my back pocket, vibrated against the chair leg. I shifted my weight, maneuvering until I could press the answer button with my bound hand. Leo's voice filled the small space between the chair and my back. "Grandpa, help us." I heard the standoff. I heard Travis threatening them. I heard the fear in my grandson's voice. And something inside me snapped. Not a bone, a barrier. I was done hiding. I was done plotting in sheds and sleeping in trucks. I was done playing their game. I looked at Vanessa, who was staring at Leo with a mixture of fear and fury. I looked at Travis, a bully with a crowbar. "I'm coming, Leo!" I shouted at the phone, hoping he could hear me through the fabric of my jeans. "Hold the line." I threw my weight to the side, tipping the chair over. I crashed to the floor, the wood shattering on impact. My hands were still taped, but my legs were free. I scrambled to my feet, ignoring the pain in my hip. Travis turned, surprised by the noise. I didn't give him a chance to react. I lowered my shoulder and charged. I hit him square in the chest, sending him crashing back into the counter. The crowbar clattered to the floor. I kicked him hard in the knee. He screamed and went down. "Run!" I yelled to Leo. "Get out! Go to the neighbors!" Leo grabbed Noah's hand and bolted for the front door. Vanessa tried to grab them, but I stepped in her way, a 69-year-old human shield. "You want to fight someone?" I growled, staring her down. "Fight me!" She backed away, terrified. I heard the front door slam. They were safe. For now. I looked at Travis writhing on the floor and Vanessa cowering in the corner. I wasn't going to run. I wasn't going to hide. I turned and walked out the back door into the storm. I walked straight to my truck. I got in my hands still taped and managed to start the engine. I drove to the police station. I walked into the lobby, dripping wet duct tape on my wrists, and looked the desk sergeant in the eye. "My name is Harold Foster," I said. "I want to turn myself in, and I want to press charges. It was time to take this to the only place where the truth still mattered. Court. I was going to dry myself off, put on a suit, and I was going to burn their lies to the ground. Total war. No prisoners." The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old lies. I sat at the defense table, tugging at the collar of my suit. It was the same charcoal gray suit I had worn to bury my wife 10 years ago, and now it felt like I was wearing it to bury myself. Beside me, Albert was arranging his papers, his hands shaking just slightly. He looked old. We both did. Two relics from a bygone era facing off against a modern machine built on deceit. Across the aisle, Mr. O'Connor sat like a king on a throne. He was younger than Travis, maybe in his late 30s, wearing a navy blue suit that cost more than my entire tool collection. He had that shark-like grin, the kind that says he doesn't care about the truth, only the win. Vanessa sat next to him, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. She was wearing a modest beige dress, her hair pulled back. She looked fragile. She looked innocent. It made me want to vomit. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Davies walked in. He was a stern man with a face carved from granite. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked at us over the rim. "Mr. O'Connor, you may proceed with your opening statement." O'Connor stood up, buttoning his jacket. He didn't walk to the podium. He walked straight to the jury box, making eye contact with every single juror. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice smooth as silk. "We are here today to discuss a tragedy. Not a tragedy of death, but a tragedy of the mind. A tragedy of a grandfather who, in his confusion and anger, became a danger to the very children he claims to love." He turned and pointed a finger at me. It felt like a weapon. "Harold Foster is a man losing his grip on reality. You will hear testimony today that paints a picture of a man suffering from severe cognitive decline. A man prone to violent outbursts. A man who kidnapped 3 children from their mother and held them hostage for 8 years, fueled by paranoid delusions that she was the enemy." I gripped the table edge. Paranoid delusions. That was the narrative. O'Connor walked back to his table and picked up a remote. "Exhibit A, Your Honor." The large screen on the wall flickered to life. It was the video Travis had taken. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed me rushing across the lawn, face twisted in rage, lunging at Travis. It showed me grabbing him. It showed him falling. What it didn't show was Travis striking Leo. That part had been conveniently edited out. The video started exactly 2 seconds after Travis hit the boy. To the jury, it just looked like an unhinged old man attacking a defenseless father in his own driveway. As you can see, O'Connor said, pausing for effect, the defendant's aggression is unprovoked. He attacks the legal guardian of these children in a fit of rage. This is not the behavior of a stable caregiver. This is the behavior of a violent man. A gasp rippled through the gallery. I saw the jurors whispering. A woman in the front row looked at me with pure fear. Albert stood up. Objection. Your Honor, this footage lacks context. Overruled, Judge Davies said, banging his gavel. You will have your turn, Counselor. O'Connor smiled. He knew he had them. He then produced a thick file. Exhibit B, medical records from Dr. Paul Hayes. My heart sank. The forger. They had managed to get the fake documents into evidence. These records indicate that Mr. Foster has been showing signs of early-onset dementia and intermittent explosive disorder for years. O'Connor read his voice grave. He refuses medication. He refuses treatment. And in his confused state, he fabricated a reality where his daughter abandoned her children when in fact he threatened her life if she ever returned. He laid the file on the judge's bench. It was a lie. A stack of papers bought with $50,000 of stolen money. But to the court, it looked like science. It looked like fact. Then came the final nail in my coffin. I call Vanessa Foster to the stand. Vanessa walked up, her head bowed. She swore on the Bible, her hand not even trembling. She sat down and looked at the jury with big, watery eyes. Vanessa O'Connor asked softly, "Tell us why you left 8 years ago." She took a deep breath, a tear slipping down her cheek perfectly on cue. "I didn't want to leave," she whispered. "I loved my babies. But my father, he changed after my mom died. He became obsessed. He told me I wasn't a good mother. He started controlling everything I did." She looked at me then, and for a second I saw the malice behind the tears. That night, she continued, her voice gaining strength. "He pulled a gun on me. He told me if I didn't leave, he would bury me in the backyard. He said he would tell the kids I died. I was terrified. I ran for my life." She broke down into sobs, covering her face with her hands. "I spent 8 years hiding," she cried through her fingers. "Working double shifts, saving money, just trying to find a way to get them back without getting killed. And when I finally came back, he tried to kill my husband." The courtroom was deadly silent. You could hear a pin drop. The jury was eating it up. They saw a victim, a survivor, a mother fighting for her cubs. They didn't see the woman who left a 1-year-old in a diaper carrier to go party with a biker. They didn't see the woman who planned to sell her own son to pay a gambling debt. O'Connor let the silence stretch, letting her performance sink into the jurors' bones. "No further questions, Your Honor." He sat down, looking at me with a smirk that said, "Checkmate." I looked at Albert. He was pale. The evidence against us was overwhelming. The video, the medical records, the testimony. It was a perfect frame job. I was the villain in my own life story. But O'Connor had made one mistake. He was arrogant. He thought he was fighting a senile old man and a washed-up lawyer. He didn't know about the bolt cutters. He didn't know about the Black Ops mission in the rain. And he definitely didn't know what was sitting in the briefcase under Albert's desk. Albert looked at me. "It is time, Harold." I nodded. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. My knees didn't hurt anymore. My back didn't ache. I walked to the stand not as a defendant, but as a man about to pull the pin on a grenade. "I am ready to testify," I said, my voice booming off the mahogany walls. And I wasn't just going to speak. I was going to burn their lies to the ground. I placed my hand on the Bible, and the leather cover felt cool and smooth under my calloused palm. The bailiff recited the oath, and I repeated the words, my voice steady and low. I sat down in the witness chair. The wood was hard against my back. From up here, the courtroom looked different. I could see the sweat beading on Vanessa's forehead. I could see Travis tapping his foot nervously under the table. They thought they had won. They thought the video of me attacking Travis was the nail in my coffin. Mr. O'Connor stood up, buttoning his jacket with a smug smile. He didn't even need to ask a question. He just gestured to the frozen image on the screen, the image of me with my fist raised. "Mr. Foster," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "We just saw you assault a man. We saw you lose control. Do you deny that you possess a violent temper? Do you deny that you are a danger to those around you?" I looked at the jury. 12 strangers who held my life in their hands. They looked at me with fear. They saw a crazy old man. I took a deep breath. "I do not deny it," I said, my voice carrying to the back of the room. A ripple of surprise went through the gallery. O'Connor blinked, his smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "I hit him," I continued, looking directly at Travis. "I kicked him. And if I had the strength, I probably would have done worse." "But you are asking the wrong question, Mr. O'Connor. You are asking if I am violent. You should be asking why a man who served his country with honor for 20 years and never even got a speeding ticket would suddenly decide to fight a man half his age." I turned to the judge. Judge Davies was watching me over his spectacles, his face unreadable. "Your Honor, for 3 days, this court has heard stories about a secret fortune. My daughter claims I am hoarding $500,000 from an insurance policy. She claims I kidnapped her children to keep this money for myself." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. "There is no insurance money." Vanessa let out a scoff from the plaintiff's table, but I ignored her. "My son-in-law Jackson, Vanessa's first husband, was a good man, but he had a sickness. He gambled. By the time he died in that car crash 9 years ago, he didn't have life insurance. He had debt, massive crushing debt. He owed people who break legs for a living. Vanessa knows this. She was there when they came knocking on our door at midnight, threatening to burn the house down with the baby inside." I saw Vanessa stiffen. Her face went pale. This wasn't in her script. "I had an inheritance," I said, my voice thick with the memory of what I had lost. "My father left me 40 acres of prime farmland 2 counties over. It was my retirement. It was the legacy I wanted to leave to my grandchildren. But when those men came for Jackson and Vanessa, I didn't call the police. I didn't run. I sold the land, every single acre. I leaned forward, gripping the railing of the witness stand. I took that check for $480,000, and I paid off every dime of Jackson's debt. I cleared his name so he could be buried without shame. I gave the rest to Vanessa to help her get on her feet. And what did she do? She spent it. She blew through $50,000 in 3 months, and then she left. She dropped those kids on my porch and vanished because the money was gone and she didn't want the work of raising them." The courtroom was silent. O'Connor looked like he was trying to figure out how to object, but he couldn't find the words. "I didn't kidnap those children," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. "I rescued them. I have spent the last 8 years working on engines until my hands bled to put food on the table because there was no secret fortune left. I spent it all to save her life." I pointed a trembling finger at Vanessa. She came back because she thought there was more. She thought I lied about the land. She thought I kept the money. And when she couldn't find it, she tore my house apart. She beat my grandson. She starved my youngest. And when I tried to stop her, she filmed it and called it assault. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding against my ribs. "I am not a violent man, Your Honor, but I am a grandfather, and I will do whatever it takes to protect my own, even if it means going to jail, even if it means losing my reputation." Judge Davies looked at me, his expression softening, just a fraction. "Is there anything else you wish to add, Mr. Foster?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. "My daughter claims she left because I threatened her. She claims she has emails and texts proving I am a monster. She claims she fought to come back. I looked over at Albert, who was sitting at the defense table clutching the battered leather briefcase we had retrieved from the safety deposit box that morning. He gave me a small nod. I have spent 8 years preparing for this day, I said. I knew she would come back. Not for the kids, but for money. And I knew she would lie. So I kept something. One single envelope. I turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I ask the court's permission to introduce one final piece of evidence. It is not a digital file that can be faked. It is not a story. It is the only thing in this room that cannot lie. Judge Davies looked at O'Connor, who was now standing up, looking nervous. Objection. Your Honor, surprise evidence, O'Connor stammered. Overruled, the judge said, his eyes locked on mine. He was curious. I could see it. Mr. Albert, you may present the evidence. Albert stood up, his hands shaking as he lifted the briefcase onto the table. The click of the latches sounded like gunshots in the quiet room. He pulled out the yellowed manila envelope, the one I had buried, and unburied the one that had traveled through storms and years to get here. I watched him walk toward the bench, and I looked at Vanessa. She was staring at the envelope, and for the first time since she kicked down my door, I saw true terror in her eyes. She didn't know what was inside, but she knew her time was up. I sat back in the witness chair and waited for the bomb to drop. The courtroom was so quiet. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning unit and the frantic beating of my own heart. Albert walked toward the bench with a slow, deliberate gait, his cane tapping a steady rhythm on the floor. He held the manila envelope with both hands like it was a holy relic. It was stained with age, the corners bent a physical testament to the 8 years it had spent waiting for this moment. Judge Davies leaned over the high wooden bench, his face impassive. He took the envelope from Albert. He looked at the seal, then at me, then at Vanessa. She was sitting up straight now, her neck craned, trying to see what was inside. I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, a dawn of memory that she was desperately trying to suppress. She remembered the rainy night. She remembered the kitchen table. She remembered the pen in her hand. The judge picked up a letter opener. The sound of tearing paper was sharp and violent. He slid the contents out. It wasn't a thick stack of medical records or a printed email chain. It was a single sheet of yellow legal paper, handwritten in blue ink. Attached to it was a faded pink receipt. Judge Davies adjusted his glasses. He read the document in silence. His eyes moved left to right, then stopped. He frowned. He read it again. Then he looked up, and his expression had changed completely. The boredom, the professional detachment was gone. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. He looked directly at Vanessa. Miss Foster, the judge said, his voice low and dangerous. Do you recognize this document? Vanessa stood up, her hand trembling. I do not know what that is, Your Honor. My father is trying to trick you. He forges things. Sit down, the judge barked. He turned back to the paper and cleared his throat. Let the record show that the defense has submitted a handwritten contract dated November 14th, 2015. It bears the signature of Vanessa Foster and the stamp of a state notary public. He paused, letting the date sink in. November 14th, the day she left. The document reads as follows. I, Vanessa Foster, being of sound mind and body, hereby voluntarily and irrevocably relinquish all parental rights and custody of my 3 children, Leo, Mia, and Noah, to their grandfather, Harold Foster. A gasp went through the room. The jury leaned forward. O'Connor, the shark lawyer, looked like he had just swallowed poison. He started to stand up to object, but the judge held up a hand, silencing him instantly. I am not finished, Judge Davies said, his eyes never leaving Vanessa's face. I agree to leave the state of Illinois and never return. I agree to have no contact with the children or Harold Foster. In exchange for this agreement, I acknowledge receipt of a cash payment in the amount of $20,000 to be used for my personal relocation. The judge lowered the paper. $20,000, Ms. Foster. You did not run for your life. You did not hide in terror. You sold your children. You sold 3 human beings for the price of a used car and a plane ticket. Vanessa's face went gray. The color drained out of her so fast, I thought she was going to faint. She grabbed the edge of the table, her knuckles white. No, she whispered. That is not... I was young. I was confused. He made me sign it. The judge held up the pink receipt attached to the back. And this receipt from the notary public, Ms. Foster. It says you paid the fee yourself. It says you produced a driver's license and swore under oath that you were signing of your own free will. Did my client hold a gun to your head inside the notary office too? Vanessa opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at O'Connor, but he had moved his chair away from her, putting physical distance between himself and the radioactive truth that had just been exposed. He knew. He knew the case was dead. He knew his client was a fraud. I watched her crumble. The grieving mother act the victim narrative, the tears, it all dissolved. What was left was just a greedy, selfish woman who had made a business transaction 8 years ago and had come back to try and collect a second time. She looked at me across the aisle. Her eyes were wild, terrified. She saw the man she thought she could bully, the man she thought was senile and weak, and she realized that while she was playing checkers, I had been playing a game she didn't even understand. Is this your signature? The judge asked, holding the paper up for the court to see. Vanessa sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Yes, she sobbed. Yes, it is mine. The sound of her admission was the sweetest thing I had ever heard. It wasn't just a legal victory, it was vindication. It was the lock snapping shut on her lies. But I wasn't done. Albert reached into the briefcase again. Your Honor, Albert said, we have one more thing, because the contract was just the nail in the coffin. The next piece of evidence was the dirt we were going to bury her with. Albert reached into his briefcase one last time and pulled out a small black USB drive. He plugged it into the court's presentation system. The large screen behind the witness stand flickered from blue to a grainy black and white video feed. The timestamp in the corner read November 14th, 2015. It was the interior of the First National Bank. The angle was high from the security camera in the corner. Everyone in the courtroom leaned forward, squinting at the screen. There she was, Vanessa. She looked younger, her hair wilder, but it was undeniably her. She was standing at the teller counter next to me. I watched my younger self hand her a thick white envelope. The courtroom watched as she tore it open right there in the lobby, not caring who saw. She thumbed through the bills, her face lighting up with a greed that was sickening to witness. She did not look sad. She did not look coerced. She looked like she had just won the lottery. But then came the part that made the jury gasp in collective horror. Sitting on the floor next to my leg was a baby carrier. Inside was 1-year-old Noah. Vanessa finished counting the money and shoved the envelope into her purse. She turned to leave. She did not bend down. She did not kiss her son goodbye. She did not even look at him. She just stepped around the carrier, pushed through the glass doors, and walked out of his life without breaking her stride. The video froze on the image of the abandoned baby carrier. Vanessa was shaking her head violently at the defense table, mouthing the word no over and over again. But Albert wasn't done. He tapped the spacebar on his laptop. Audio file play, he said. The courtroom speakers crackled with the sound of heavy rain and thunder. Then voices cut through the static, clear and terrifying. Monday, Vanessa. They said Monday. Do you know what happens on Monday if I do not have the cash? It was Travis. His voice was unmistakable. We liquidate the assets, the tools, the electronics. Then came the line that sucked the oxygen out of the room. And the kid, the little one. Noah. I know a guy in the city. Handles private adoptions. Fast track. A healthy white boy like that. He is worth 40, maybe 50 grand up front. The recording continued, playing Vanessa's hesitant voice asking if it was safe and Travis confirming they would just tell the police he ran away. Pandemonium broke out. It wasn't a murmur anymore, it was a roar of outrage. Jurors were standing up, their faces twisted in disgust. The judge was hammering his gavel, but nobody heard it over the noise of the crowd. Travis jumped up from his seat, his chair clattering backward to the floor. He looked around wildly, like a trapped animal realizing the walls were closing in. He looked at the exit, but two bailiffs were already moving toward him, hands on their holsters. Vanessa didn't move. She just slumped forward, her forehead hitting the mahogany table with a dull thud. She didn't cry this time. There were no fake tears left. The monster underneath the mask had been dragged out into the light for everyone to see, and it was uglier than anyone could have imagined. The heavy oak doors of the courtroom swung open with a groan as two bailiffs dragged Travis out. He wasn't shouting anymore. He was weeping, a broken man who realized his gamble had cost him everything. But Vanessa was still fighting. She clung to the defense table, her knuckles white, her face a mask of twisted fury and disbelief. Two officers grabbed her arms, pulling her back, but she planted her heels, screaming over the noise of the gallery. The money, she shrieked, her eyes locked on me with a terrifying intensity. Where is the money, Harold? You have to tell me. Jackson left $500,000. I saw the papers. I know it is real. I walked slowly from the witness stand to the railing. I looked down at her. She didn't look like my daughter. She looked like a stranger consumed by a hunger that could never be filled. There is no insurance money, Vanessa, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. Jackson didn't pay his premiums for 6 months before he died. The letter you saw was a notice of cancellation, not a payout. He died broke. Liar, she screamed, spittle flying from her lips. You are a liar. You have money. You sold the farm. I know you did. I nodded slowly. I did, I said. I sold the 40 acres Dad left me. $480,000. See, she yelled triumphantly, looking around at the jury, at the judge, as if this vindicated everything she had done. He admits it. He has it. He stole it from us. I had it, and I corrected her, my voice hard. 8 years ago. I used $200,000 to pay off Jackson's gambling debts so his bookies wouldn't burn the house down with you and the baby inside. I gave you $20,000 to leave because I knew you would destroy them if you stayed. And the rest, she demanded, her eyes wide. Where is the rest? I turned and pointed to the back of the courtroom. Leo, Mia, and Noah were sitting there with the court-appointed social worker. They looked small, scared, but safe. I spent it on them, I said. Every single dime. Braces for Leo. Dance lessons for Mia. Asthma medication for Noah. Food. Clothes. Heating bills. The transmission for the truck so I could get to work. I leaned over the railing, getting close enough to see the cracks in her foundation. I didn't hoard it, Vanessa. I lived on it. We lived on it. That money didn't go into a wall safe or a secret bank account. It went into raising the children you threw away like garbage. It is gone. It has been gone for years. Vanessa went still. Her arms went slack in the officer's grip. The realization hit her like a physical blow, staggering her more than any punch could. She had come back for a pot of gold. She had burned down her life, committed felonies, and destroyed her family for a fortune that had been spent on cereal and school shoes. You are broke, she whispered, the horror dawning on her face. I am debt-free, I said, and I am rich in ways you will never understand. The officers seized the moment and pulled her away. She stumbled, her legs barely working. She looked back over her shoulder, her eyes searching the room, not for me, but for the children she had tried to sell. Leo, she called out, her voice weak and desperate. Leo didn't answer. He didn't even blink. He reached out and took Mia's hand, squeezing it tight. He turned his head away, looking at me instead. I watched them haul her out. Her screams fading into the hallway, leaving behind a silence that felt like the first breath of fresh air in 8 years. 6 months later, the smell of summer has finally replaced the damp chill of that storm. I am standing on the porch, holding a glass of iced tea, watching the sunset paint the Chicago sky in shades of orange and purple. The yard is fixed. We replanted the petunias Noah loves. The grass is green again, covering the scars of tire tracks and neglect. The house is quiet, but it is a good quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a job well done. Leo walks out the front door carrying a duffel bag. He is wearing a university t-shirt. He got a full scholarship to the state engineering program. He didn't need a secret inheritance. He had his own brain and the work ethic I taught him in the shop. "Ready, Grandpa?" he asks, adjusting his cap. I nod, swallowing the lump in my throat. "The truck is gassed up," I say. Mia comes running out, giving him a hug that almost knocks him over. She is different now. The makeup is gone, the attitude is gone. She is just a 14-year-old girl who likes to bake cookies and read books. She is healing. We all are. Noah runs out from the backyard, his knees grass-stained. "Are you coming back on weekends, Leo?" he asks, looking up at his big brother. "Every weekend, buddy," Leo promises, ruffling his hair. "You have to keep Grandpa out of trouble." "I am not the one who needs watching," I grumble, but I am smiling. We walk to the truck, the same old Chevy that served as my bunker during the war. It shines in the evening light. I look at my family. Not the one I was born into, but the one I built, the one I fought for. Vanessa and Travis are serving 15 years in state prison. The house is legally mine again. The restraining orders are permanent. But more importantly, the fear is gone. People ask me if I am angry, if I resent spending my golden years raising children instead of retiring to Florida to fish. I look at Leo loading his bag. I look at Mia laughing. I look at Noah chasing a firefly. I tell them I didn't lose my retirement. I invested it. And the return is better than any stock market. I climb into the driver's seat. Leo hops in shotgun. "Let's go, kid," I say, putting it in gear. "You have a future to catch." We drive off down the street, leaving the shadows of the past behind us. The envelope is gone. The money is gone. But we are still here. And that is all that matters. Thanks for watching my story. If you believe family is about who stays, not who leaves, hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.